Welcome to another episode of Pro Talks. We are so excited to have Matt Mauzy here today. It's really cool for us San Diegans because if you're driving around San Diego, you can't be on any freeway and not see an epic Mauzy billboard sign. No frills, really no call to action on it, just like boom, in your face, Mauzy. We're going to talk about that a little later, so that's important. So we're sitting down with Matt Mauzy, who is the owner, and he has an incredible story that we're going to learn about today, and it's very unexpected, but it also, I think, is going to be really relatable to a lot of you listening and really just to those who are in the trades in general. And now Matt, he owns one of the biggest HVAC companies in San Diego, grossing over $20 million a year in revenue and with 107 employees. So we're going to talk about Matt's story from dropping out of high school, battling addiction, and turning his life around to now owning this incredible company that literally any San Diegan, even before I worked in home services, I knew what Mauzy was because I live here. And so after that, we're going to be talking about how to identify if you are unbalanced as a business owner in your personal life and actual tactical steps on how to combat this every day so you can show up as your best self and make sure you're showing up for your employees. And then 3 major aha moments and leaps in Matt's business success. This is the part you're going to want to get a pen and a paper because if you want to be where Matt is one day, he's dropping 3 really great tactical things that you can do today. So we like to start this off with what we call a lightning Greenberg round. It is a combination of our 2 last names, Lighten Greenberg. It's a lightning round. So we want to get to know you, Matt, in 1 minute. So just flash answers. I'm going to start. Where did you grow up?
San Diego, Lakeside, specifically in San Diego.
Oh, Lakeside. All right.
Oh, Lakeside.
Lakeside. Go Lakeside. Yeah, it's a little rough right now in San Diego. There's a lot of fires everywhere, definitely out in East County. So hopefully everyone's staying safe here. Matt, what's your proudest accomplishment so far?
Proudest accomplishment is probably the way that I'm viewed by my employees, the way that I'm viewed by the people that work for me in the building here and outside the building.
That's an important part of your story too.
Great answer. That's a great answer.
Yeah, great answer. Okay, less deep. Dogs or cats?
Dogs or cats? Cats for me. They just, I love both, but cats are in your lap, purring, just want attention. Definitely cats.
I love that answer.
Alexa's cats and I'm dogs. All right. If you could only do one activity for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Fish. I would be standing on a shore somewhere, either on a river, lake, and with a pole in my hand, fishing.
Nice.
That's the dream. And so what is one outdoor activity you would never, ever do?
Outdoor activity, I would never do surf. Not a great swimmer. Don't like sharks. Definitely wouldn't want to be on the surfboard.
It's funny too, in San Diego, everyone says they surf. You're like, nah, not surfing. We're good.
No surfing.
All right. Something a lot of people don't know about you.
Something a lot of people don't know about me. I would probably have to go back to the education part. Most people would never guess and don't know that, I have 0 formal education.
We're definitely going to dive into that one.
We'll dive into that, but that's probably the number one thing. Otherwise I'm pretty transparent. There's not much hiding behind the door. It's just me.
And what's one skill or talent that you wish you had?
Oh, one skill or talent I wish I had. I wish I could skateboard. I've always gone down. Don't like the water at the beach, but love the boardwalk, the people watching. But I watch people skateboard, and I just think, wow, how cool would that be to be able to control a piece of plywood with wheels like that. I'm always blown away by that. But I always wished I could skateboard.
I gotta get you on one of my electric skateboards. If they can, push me around, then you'll be going like 100 miles an hour. It's a lot of fun. Super dangerous.
It's so dangerous. Roland brought his electric skateboard to the office, and he made sure all of us went on it and was zipping around the office. I'm like, this can't be normal or like safe.
Safe, yeah. They're neat though. I see them. They're really neat.
They're fun. All right, last question here. What did you want to be when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be a police officer. My whole family was in law enforcement, and it just, the adrenaline rush, but I always wanted to be a police officer, and, and I I blew that dream, early on, with addiction. But that was always a dream of mine, was to be in law enforcement.
Alrighty, so we're going to jump in here into the rest of the interview. One thing we'd like to start out with is, how did we meet? So we talked to a lot of pros here. Those Genesis stories are always really fun. So maybe first impressions, and then I'll kind of riff off of my impressions.
Ooh, I like this.
Yeah, so I just remember reaching out to Housecall Pro. We had one of our distributors, Heating and Cooling Supply, which is part of the Watsco group. My territory manager brought in a little flyer that kind of announced this partnership with Housecall Pro. And I remember hearing a little bit about the technology and how customer focused it was. It was all about communication and the customer, and that's something that in my business has always been a top priority for us. Is that communication, taking care of the customer. And I just remember hearing a few things about what the software would do to automate some of that process. And I thought, wow, how cool is that? And so we picked up the phone and we scheduled a demo. And in scheduling that demo, we were asked, what size our company was. And pretty quickly into the demo, we were told, well, hey, you're probably not the best fit for the software right now, because it was newer and we were, a little bit larger company. And I just remember saying, no, wait a minute, can't do that. We really want this software. We'll work with it. At the time we were using Successware, which is, real high end, powerful reporting. And I just remember being told, look, we don't want to disappoint you. We would rather come back to you in a year. And once we've got, some things put together, then work with you now, have you be disappointed and leave feeling that way. And I just kept on it. And then eventually I was asked if I would mind meeting with somebody from Housecall Pro to discuss, maybe what we would like to see, to see if there might be a fit. And we agreed to meet, and we were both in San Diego, which was awesome, San Diego company. And with you guys and us. So we agreed to meet. We set up a meeting at the office, and lo and behold, I watched this guy get out of his car. And I just remember, watching this guy walk in the front door and duck to come in the front door. And I was speechless. And in walked in Roland. And I was just blown away, not just by his size, but just how amazing he was. And then to find out that this is, one of the founders, one of the engineers and his background. And we went into our conference room and sat down, and, that's where it started. And it was just the most amazing meeting, I'll never forget it, and then, I'll never forget after Roland left, just standing in my lobby thinking, wow, that was pretty powerful, to be able to sit with a guy like Roland and have somebody actually come out and sit with us, and ask us those types of questions and get feedback from us was pretty amazing. So that's kind of how the introduction or the relationship started.
Yeah, I think it was so fun because I remember coming in and I remember sitting down, and you have like a little conference table area there. So you brought all the stakeholders in, you were there. And the first thing, we even talked about, I was like, look, if we can make this work, Matt, we're going to get you onboarded. But first I got to ask you a whole bunch of questions. And I think the biggest thing there that I detected just during that meeting was like, you're like, no, we can make it work with this. We're thinking about our workaround, or we can do it this way. And as soon as I felt that engagement, I was like, okay, this could potentially work. Cause we're like, all right, I don't know yet if we're ready to bite off, this big chunk of food yet. Maybe we wait a little bit until we get a little older. But it turns out the one thing that I feel like, and we'll dive more into this later in the interview, is like you're very adaptive, open to change, looking for ways to optimize, and always thinking about, okay, with this and go this way, let's do this way. And I feel like that kind of conversation, I was like, okay, no, this is actually going to work. And the coolest thing too is, we grow based upon our feedback from our customers. And obviously, like we've talked, I don't know, hours and hours and hours on the feedback, but not just you, your team, dispatch, spend a lot of time with G, like just everybody from the team is always so open and willing to give feedback. And then from that, we've made so many different changes, product improvements, speed things, just like over the years. So I remember that was a fun meeting, and I was probably wearing the same hat. I've been wearing this hat forever. And obviously San Diego, so it's a flip-flop story. But
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of business owners don't have that adaptive mindset, willingness to change and think through things that way.
Same hat, same flip-flops.
Same flip-flops, same shorts. Not much changes. And I think, Roland, you're right. And that is really part of a company's success, is being able to adapt, right? Not getting, caught up in doing the same thing every day. And if there's any type of change, it throwing you off your game. You've got to, every single day, you've got to wake up and be willing to adapt, especially, and I try not to get tunnel vision. I try and have, much wider vision of things, marketing, and your software was one of those things where it's like, look, the base was there. That was just amazing, and it's like, okay, let's, that's there, that's in place. The foundation was there. And, we wanted to be, part of the growth and the change. And, and from that first meeting, I could tell, the way you guys are a lot like we are in your focuses and being able to adapt. And, you said the word workaround earlier. I mean, that's just what we do every day, right? Every day we have to come up with
everything, always. Yeah. Customers in the shop, picking up parts, supplies. I'm sure like HR personnel, people calling in sick last minute.
Yep.
San Diego summers, man, they get hot, and I can only imagine. Well, I can't imagine because I can actually see how you guys do in summer, but it's just crazy to see just how much it picks up. Because in some parts in San Diego, you can't live without it. You just can't do it. It's just impossible. All right, Alexa.
Okay, so Matt, take us back to pre-Roland, pre-Housecall, pre-107 employees and where you're at now. So you've had a very interesting story. Kind of take us to the start when you knew you wanted to work in the trades.
Okay, so growing up, my dad had worked in the industry. He was a sheet metal worker his whole life. Working for heating and air conditioning companies, more on the commercial side. And so growing up, I was around the industry. So growing up, I summers I would go to work with my dad. I kind of saw what it was like, and I'm the kind of person that's hands-on, right? I always like to tear, I get a new bike, I tear the banana seat off of it, put a regular seat, tear the chain guard off, I wanted it to look cool. And so kind of a hands-on person. Well, my, did really well in school, through, elementary school, middle school, got into high school, was, in high school was a, straight A student, didn't do much studying. I could just kind of, listen in class and figure things out. The 10th grade ended up, I had trigonometry, astrology, all these crazy advanced courses, but I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I, was going to be, a sheet metal worker or, end up going to work in the heating and air industry. So my second week of my 10th grade year, I remember sitting down with the counselor, because I was a little frustrated and bored. And this would never happen today, and back in the day, we had a couple counselors, and he sat down with the counselor, and I, explained to the counselor why I was frustrated and what was going on. And the counselor wanted to schedule a meeting with my folks. And, so we met 2 weeks later, and the counselor actually recommended, like I said, you'll never hear this today from a counselor, that I get my GED. I get out of high school, go to work, and get my GED. So my parents, agreed to it because they knew, as a kid, I was, pretty hyperactive. And, so I did. I left high school, went to work in the industry. 2 weeks into my 10th grade year, never got my GED. I don't have a high school diploma. I've never been to trade school, never been to college. No formal, training or schooling really whatsoever, other than 10 years in local school. So got out, went to work. Well, with the active mind that I have, I ended up getting into started drinking at an early age and ended up getting into methamphetamines. This was back in my late teens, early 20s. And they just really, they took their toll on me. I mean, it was really tough for me for about 2 or 3 years to, climb out from underneath of this. And I'll never forget, it was a summer day here in San Diego. There's a freeway, the Interstate 8, and there's an exit called the 2nd Street exit, which is in East County, El Cajon. And
Yep.
I remember waking up one morning, it's just hearing the cars going over my head. I woke up underneath the bridge. I had lost my vehicle, had been repoed. My wife had taken my 2-year-old son, and basically left me. And I was living underneath the bridge, and I just remember waking up, hearing the cars go over. And I remember thinking, Matt, is this it? Is this what you're going to be? Are you going to be, are you going to be a bum? You're going to spend the rest of your life being a drug addict and a bum. Well, I, packed up my stuff. I walked about 4 miles to a rehab called McAllister Institute for Teaching and Education here in El Cajon, and enrolled myself in rehab, and met with some really incredible people at the rehab, and just went to work. I went to work working on myself. And that's really what I needed to do, was just focus on just me and my health. Did that, went to rehab, got clean, and ended up going to work for a heating and air conditioning company locally here in San Diego, and worked there for about 2 years. And about my second year there, I remember I got called upstairs by the owner of the company, and I was real proactive as an employee. I mean, I went out of my way to protect the company. I went out of my way to be a leader. I went out of my way to make sure that the company was profitable on everything that I personally ran. They called me upstairs and just said, "Hey, what do you think about owning a company, a heating and air company?" And I said, God, that would be,
How old were you, Matt? How old were you at this point where the owner goes, yeah, let's just bring him upstairs and let's go?
22 years old.
22 years old.
22.
So
I was a kid, right?
Yep.
And this company, had been in business at that time, 25 or 30 years. And 22 years old. And I just remember saying, yeah, I'd love it, and I asked a few more questions. And, he was talking about, his company, the company that I worked for. And I remember saying, well, hey, look, I could never afford to buy a company, right? I'm a 22-year-old kid, I didn't have much money in the bank, a couple of years out of recovery. And I remember him, getting a little upset with me and looking at me and saying, that's not what I asked you. What I asked you is if you would want to, own a company. I said, yeah, absolutely. And so he asked me if I'd go home and talk to my wife, and see if it was something that that we would embrace. And so of course I did. I went home that night and talked to her. The next day he called me back up and asked me what I thought. And I immediately again went to yeah, I would love to, but I went right back to the financial part of things. And I remember he kind of stood up and he said, look, we're not talking about money. I just want to know your level of interest. Well, within a week, we ended up going to lunch and sitting down, and he offered to sell me the company for $25,000 and allowed me to make $1,000 a month payments to him for 25 months. And wow. I remember I was pretty blown away. I'm just like, I was scared, number one, because here I'm taking on, and at the time, it seemed like a lot. I mean, I think the company was doing about $400,000 a year in gross sales. That seemed like a ton back then to me. So I was kind of scared because it was, running a company is, was foreign to me.
Yep.
But I was up for the challenge. And I remember, we went to lunch and we shook hands. I took over the middle of August of that year, about 3 months later. The best part about it was, took over the middle of August. By the end of August, I wrote this man a check for the $25,000.
So you had ran enough jobs, you made enough money to
2 weeks
to get the cash in the bank to write that check just to buy him out.
2 weeks. In 2 weeks' time, and I had enough money in the bank. Keep in mind, middle of summer, right? That's when you're the busiest. But yeah, in 2 weeks' time, I had enough to write him a check and thank him. And just an incredible man. I still go to lunch with him yearly. About 2 or 3 years after I bought the company, I remember asking him, why me? What did you see? Why did you, because it was a gift. I mean, obviously that's a blessing. And, I asked him, why me? And he looked at me and he said, why do you shouldn't even have to ask that question. He said, look around. look what you're doing already. He said, you know, when you run a business for 25 or 30 years, the one thing you're concerned with is making sure that your customers are taken care of and the business continues to do well. And he goes, you can look around already and see just how well you've done, you know. And today he's super proud. You know, he's still alive, and I still see him a couple times a year. But, you know, he sees the company and the brand and how respected it is, and, you know, where it's at today. And you know, he's super, super proud. But yeah, just an incredible story.
Yeah, that's awesome, and such a great compliment too. You know, coming from him, even years later, because I can only imagine there's probably like a FOMO moment where he's like, "Oh wait, what did I do?" But he's like, "No, this is in great hands." That's so amazing.
Well, Matt, how does that kind of contribute to what do you think your superpower is in business? Obviously, you're extremely resilient. You overcame addiction, and this man put his trust in you 100% not to run the business into the ground. What would you say some of the qualities you have that make you a really, really successful person and business owner?
You know, I would say probably realizing very early how to treat people, you know, and this is employees and, you know, anybody in my life really, right? It's, you know, it starts with, you know, respecting yourself. But, for me, really, it's just the power in, you know, respecting people and taking care of people, you know, and that's, that's probably the superpower. You know, I sit with people and, you know, a lot of people think there's this magic potion, right? Like, you know, there's this perfect marketing scheme or, you know, something that you have to do to, you know, really there isn't, you know, I mean, really the superpower is just, you know, picking good people, empowering those good people and taking care of them. And when you do that, they will take care of your customers, their coworkers around them. You know, it just spreads from there. But, you know, really, you know, my superpower is just, you know, I love taking care of the people around me, you know, and when you do that, you know, they in turn turn around and they take care of the people that are around them, you know, and that they work with every day. So, you know, that's really where the secret is just, you know, picking good people, empowering them, and, you know, letting them know each and every day just how important they are, you know, as an employee, as a person. And, you know, it's amazing what'll happen if you just do, you know, those couple of simple things.
So you've hired and fired a lot of people, right, over the years.
Yes.
How do you find a good person? You know, what are things that you're looking for? Maybe what are some questions? Because I know a lot of our pros struggle with this. They're always scared to go hire, you know, the second and third technician because nobody ever does as good as them. You know, like they're trying to figure out how do they hire good people. Do you hire people that have backgrounds similar to yourself? Do you like, what are you looking for? What are some tips there?
You know, that's you know, I'm looking for somebody with a good heart, you know, and that's you know, that's tough to find in a you know, in a 15-minute interview, right? You know, because if somebody's, you know, the two things, good heart and work ethic, right? If somebody's got those two things, you know, those are two things really that you can't teach. You know, I mean, you know, if somebody's got a good heart and good work ethic, you know, you can teach them a bunch of different things. But, you know, for me years ago, what I started doing is just observing people. Like if I go into, you know, to the Pep Boys and I go in there and I work with somebody at the counter on the floor that's you know, that's really good, right? That, you know, treats me really well, you know, it's great customer service. You can just tell when somebody's, you know, just, you know, an overall good person. You know, I'll go back into that Pep Boys, right? You know, I'll make a trip in there for something else, you know, and, you know, if I go back in the second time and I get the same feeling, I'm dropping my business card. I'm handing that person my card, you know, and not that I want to rip off a good employee from Pep Boys. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, I think I can provide an opportunity to somebody like that. You know, I want to get them in an interview, you know, and I want to go sit down. And typically what I'll do is I'll do the first interview is a formal interview where I'll sit in the conference room here, we'll talk. And then usually what I like to do, especially if it's a key position, right? Like a customer service representative, a manager, I want to go sit down outside of the office and have lunch with them and get into
Yep.
Yeah, and get out of the because when people are in a conference room, right? They're nervous. There's a lot. That's great. The first meeting just to get the general info as far as their qualifications, but then second interview always outside of the office, down the street at the Denny's or In-N-Out Burger, sitting outside on a picnic table, just chatting. Now that's where you find out what somebody's heart is like. That's when you find out a lot about a person, right? What drives them, are they driven by the right things, right? Are they family person, are they, their interests, something that would, work well with the rest of the group here. That's really where you get a lot of information, that you really don't get in that formal setting. So I'd say, start by just taking a look at people when you're outside of your work environment. You'll find a lot of good people that way. Church, the grocery store, when you're out shopping, family events. And then, I would say make that second interview a less, more personal interview. Don't do it at the office. Get outside of the office where it's in a more relaxed environment. And that's usually by that second interview, when you're walking away, from that, back to your car, you'll know. There'd be no doubt, you'll know by then, is this going to be a great fit or is this not going to be a great fit?
Yeah, I like the always recruiting mentality that you have, because you can find good people anywhere. And the way that you actually approach it mentally is also really good, which means like, I'm just looking for great people and I might be able to give them an even better opportunity. So like you said, you're not there to go rip off good employees for somewhere else. You just happen to meet good people and you can offer them a path to learning, making more money, new skills, a new family, a new team, whatever the things are that they end up joining Mozzy for, right? The company. That sounds like a really good method. And I feel like a lot of our pros, they're always in this feast or famine mode where it's like, oh my God, it's busy season. Now I got to start hiring. Like you're already way too late. You're behind the curve. And then at the end, you're like, oh, now I got to let a whole bunch of people go. But you've been able to just grow steadily and just continue to grow, keep the crew around. I know people have been at Mozzy for a long time. So many people that I've talked to at your company have been there for so long. So they're really like Mozzy for life, and that's a really, really cool culture to build.
And also a note too, Matt, like after you hire them, you told us last time you don't even have any titles in your company. And that's also that's a unique decision too, in terms of taking care of your people in that way.
Yeah, it's a lot of companies, you have layers, right? There's these different layers and titles and, managers, and not at Mozzy. There's, in Mozzy, we're just a team, right? We're not, we all have different positions, but we are a team, so I don't care if it's Matt Mozzy or, somebody that's just starting with us that's, maybe, working for, us for the summer, sweeping the back parking lots. There's no title. We all are equals and we all have a job to do. And if we all do our job and do it well, as a company, we do well. And that's, that's huge. As soon as you start putting titles under people's names, you start to breed a culture and an environment that sometimes can be unhealthy, because, I believe it's a team effort, if your job is to answer the phone and get a customer scheduled, that's great. If your job is to make sure that the materials are pulled and ready for the next day, none of these jobs are any more important than the other one. They're all crucial to the entire process. They're all crucial in serving the customer. So yeah, we, no titles in our company. And, and I'm down there a lot of times sweeping the parking lot myself. I still run service calls. I think I've done probably 30 calls this summer out in homes with customers. When there's a need, when there's a hole that needs to be plugged, we just jump in and take care of it. So yeah, we are titleless as a company because we're just one big team.
Yeah, I love the taking out the trash mentality, so nobody's above any type of work ever.
Nope.
And then the anti-title, which is just, hey, everyone's a team. I feel like a lot of people get kind of indoctrinated with like, you got to have, 7 layers and this report to that. And Obviously if you're scaling thousands of people, you need to have a little more structure, but at these levels, even at our startup too, it's still very flat. It has to be, because we're all definitely a team, and my team is definitely structured that way, because you're right. No job is any more or less important than any other one. Like, we're all in it together. And that's really powerful. And I don't think enough business owners really take a moment to reflect on that, because it's so obvious, yet it's such a key part to just building a successful business.
Yeah, it is, and that's, when my employees wake up in the morning, and they come to work, I don't have an employee here, and I can say this honestly, I do not have an employee here that wakes up and says, oh man, I have to go to work, and has that mentality. Now, of course, we'd all rather be out, at the park, but I want my employees, when they come into work, I want them to, look forward to where they're going, knowing that when they get here, we're going to share a laugh. We're going to get our work done, but we're going to have a good time. We're going to be able to laugh. We're going to be able to be individuals. It's that type of environment, and in the first meeting of every morning, for us is, I run it. It's a 6:30 install meeting where I have every single, installer in a room. And I start the meeting off by throwing up a funny video, because, I want to get people laughing, and by the end, that's about a half an hour meeting. And by the end of that meeting, the energy level, when these guys leave the room, the laughter and the energy level is, they come in, they're a little tired, but, after 20, 30 minutes of it being in that meeting, it's very, we go over safety and, and a lot of different things in that meeting, but we have a good time, and then I just keep that rolling right down to downstairs to say good morning to the morning crew, and share a laugh. And it's just, that is what you have to do. You have to create that environment, and you'd be shocked if you create that environment, just how much gets done and how much people actually love their job and come into work. And then that just carries through to, what they do all day long, which is helping customers.
Yeah. So let's dive a little bit into kind of like the darker side of the trades. Obviously, you shared a little bit about, your personal struggles and kind of triumphs just over addiction, when you're talking about drugs, alcohol, those types of things. Obviously, given the types of people in the home services trades, I feel like this is something with the pressures, like the constant on mentality, doing crazy things, getting in addicts, just doing all this stuff. I feel like sometimes it's good to be able to like relax and let loose a little bit. I think those things just kind of conflict a little bit. And I know this goes into your kind of your theory about, how to take care of yourself, but maybe you can kind of share some things that you've seen in the industry and then maybe elaborate a little bit more on your personal struggles and then kind of how you overcame it. Like what kind of mental models did you put yourself into to really go like tackle it head on and then beat it?
Yeah, so our industry is extremely challenging, right? It is extremely physically challenging and mentally challenging, and that's if you're an install crew, you've got the physical challenges of being in 120 degree attic, working with customers, all day long. It's just super difficult. If you're on the inside, you're dealing with a CSR, dealing with customers calling in, and let's face it, if they're calling in when it's cold and hot and they're not comfortable, so they're a lot of times they're not happy. But that takes its toll on you mentally, right? The stresses of that take their toll on you mentally. So a lot of us in the construction industry or in the service industry end up thinking that we're going to give ourselves a break by going out and buying a 6-pack of beer or a bottle of booze or maybe a drug. And what that does for a lot of us is it basically slows our mind down, lets us escape from that difficult part, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges in our industry, is the escape, and it's really hard to get away from, especially because if you're in this industry, in the service industry, you probably have a pretty active mind, probably a pretty hardworking person, and with those things is gonna come some addiction, and I think a lot of people find themselves in that mode where it's like, look, I'm never going to get anywhere. I'm an addict. I'm a drug addict. I'm an alcoholic. Drug addicts and alcoholics, what do? They live and they die young. And, not true. You can certainly go down that road. But, what I found, and I was headed down that road, what I found is what's lacking from most of us when we get into those struggles is balance. And it was what was lacking with me is was that balance. It's just nose to the grindstone. And sometimes you feel like you're just not getting anywhere, right? Nose to the grindstone, 10, 12 hours a day. Well, what I've learned over the years is you've got to take a time out. You've got to poke your head up out of that stuff, and you've got to bring balance. You have to take care of yourself. Because if you don't, it's just a matter of time before that problem continues to get worse.
And how do you identify, sorry, Matt, how do you identify because I don't think it's like an on and an off switch. It's not like you just turn a light on, turn a light off. I think there's kind of this gradient, maybe like a gradual, going from imbalance to out of balance. How do you know if you're headed in that direction? And then like, when do you know when it's too far and you're like, no, you got to like really go back to focusing on getting yourself back in balance? Like, how did you deal with that? What are some
I think, it's a feeling. So, for me, it was like I get to the end of a long week, and I'm talking like, Thursday, Friday, and it's almost like for me, I would start to justify the alcohol. So I would think, hey, you deserve a break. Mm-hmm. You had a great week, worked your butt off 12 hours a day. You deserve this break, and that break is very unhealthy. That break is turning to, alcohol or something else. So I think for me, it's a feeling that you start to get, and a lot of times, depending on what industry you're in, it could be the end of a week. It can be the end of a hot month if you're in, the heating and air industry. But, for me, you kind of feel this building where you kind of feel that frustration. You kind of feel like, okay, I've done well. It's almost like, it's crazy to say this, but it was almost like, for me, it was my reward. I'm going to reward myself by going out and tearing myself up, right? By, going out and getting drunk, or, trying to, or use something, trying to escape this. So for me, it was that feeling of, okay, you deserve a reward. And I finally figured out that, that reward, that feeling of that is what was unhealthy. So what I needed to do was bring, some balance in, and you can't get, you have to still have that reward system, because if you just think, hey, look, I'm just going to stop drinking completely, that's it, I'm done, I'm going to stop doing it, I'm going to start working out, I'm going to, eat healthy, that's all I'm going to do. Well, we all know what eventually happens there, right? It usually doesn't work out. You usually do well for a couple of months and you're right down the same road. So what you have to do, though, is still have to have the reward system in place, but you just have to replace it with healthy things. And healthy things meaning, going out, getting yourself a good meal, going to Ruth Chris, right, on Friday night, and getting a good meal. For me, it's another thing I do are Ferrari Fridays, right? Friday is my day. I get to get up, get in my Ferrari, drive it into work, get that adrenaline rush through driving the car. So you really have to, you'll feel it coming on, and you'll start thinking, okay, I deserve a break. And at that point, you do deserve a break, but you just have to bring balance in. You have to get that break through some healthy things,
Yep.
and that balance is so important, because once you get out of balance, it causes problems with your employees, relationships at home. It's really hard to get back, to that balance. So, but it's just, you really got to pay attention to yourself and how you're feeling mentally and physically.
And with that Ferrari Friday, we're not expecting all pros here to, have Ferraris, but it's the idea of the Ferrari Friday. What is that for you? What is that hobby that you really love doing? What's that activity that makes you feel like yourself and makes you feel calm and collected, where you can get your mind together, get that adrenaline rush that isn't something unhealthy for you? It's okay to reward yourself with something that isn't booze, something that isn't drugs, or if you're doing that, or with like an overindulgent meal if you're doing that a lot. So the point of this, and something that Matt is really driving home here, it's okay to take care of yourself, even as the man on top, even as the man or woman on top. So that's our challenge to you today. Figure out what your Ferrari Friday is and schedule it into your calendar for yourself, so you don't just sweep it under the rug again and turn to something else.
It's okay to be selfish, and that's, I have some friends that golf on Fridays. My son, fishes every other Friday. That's what he does. He takes a day off and he, goes out and he'll jump on a chartered boat somewhere or take a pole and go to the lake. But, you definitely, you've got, when I say balance, you've got to be a little selfish sometimes. You've got to take care of you, even when things are just seem like they're out of control. You've got to pull your head up sometimes, and that's when I think for me, I needed to do it, more than any other time, is when things got crazy, whether they got crazy busy or, sometimes it can get real slow and you start to have, you start to worry about things. That's when you've got to just take a couple of minutes and schedule something, be a little selfish, go out, get a massage, go golfing, grab a fishing pole, whatever it is that you enjoy. And this is what I encourage all of my employees to do is, be selfish, turn in a request for day off sheet and just go do something, give yourself a break and go do something fun. And that really will help you, stay balanced and help to keep you healthy.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Look forward to seeing you next week. For more information, go to housecallpro.com/pro talks.